This is a vanilla beach. It's alright, looks okay, but we can make it better. And I'm going to show you how. And it's really not that hard. So, let's do it. Alright, so we're going to start off here by just clearing out some of these side islands just to clean up the area a little bit. I'm also going to get rid of some of the trees that are on top of this little cliff. The Lorax is not going to be very happy with me, but we're going to add them back later. I also got rid of this little island on the side. I thought it looked kind of weird, so I got rid of it. We're going to continue destroying the landscape here just to make some room for what we're actually going to build in a second. Okay, so I started outlining the shape of my beach. This is a very important step because if your beach doesn't have a good shape, it won't look good in the end. I use sandstone for this as it floats unlike sand, and it's also not fucking annoying to build with. You really want to take your time with this step and not rush it. I can't stress that enough. As you can see, I didn't really like what I built here. It kind of looks like if Florida had some severe f***ing bloating, so I just decided to nuke the whole thing and start over. This time along, I went for a slightly more gentle curve, kind of resembling a snake or a gradual S. This definitely seemed to work a lot better for me. I did spend about 15 to 20 minutes doing just this. That was mainly because making these curves in Minecraft is really difficult, so I actually found a website that gives you a bunch of guides on curves. If you guys are interested, I linked that in the description. I then repeated the process just a few blocks in and one block higher just to create a little bit of a hill to add some variation. Alright, so next up I basically just started filling in this area with sand. It was really destroyed and there were holes everywhere, so I just made sure I filled everything in so it looked nice and clean. While I was doing this, I noticed that a really nice cliffside had started to form, so I decided to take advantage of that and build a side of a cliff. So I took these little dirt and grass and made little overhangs and then put stone on the bottom to create a little cliff edge type sort of thing, kind of. That was a really bad explanation, but you get the idea. Now, this was nowhere near to being finished yet. It was just so I had a little bit of a foundation in place and I could always improve it later on. I also added some little piles of sand up the edge of the cliff, just add a little bit of detail to the build. Moving right along, I started adding these little bits of coarse dirt, cobblestone, and stone buttons along the edge of the shoreline. This acted as little bits of sediment that washed up on the shore. It also made the build a lot more realistic because a beach isn't just sand, there's always some rocks and pebbles and other stuff along the shoreline. I also repeated this process by the edge of the cliff. Right, so now it's time to work on this chode of an island, cleaning it up, doing the same sort of thing, making sure the shape is all good and flattening it out, adding the same bits of sediment. You know the drill by this point. As you can see, I have this little point on the edge of the beach. I learned this trick from Good Times with Scar, and I really don't know why, but it looks really cool. If you made it this far, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button. These videos take a really long time to make, and even though it doesn't really help you out much, subscribing is really super helpful to me. At this point, I'm just finishing the side of the cliff that I never really got around to doing. It's just the same sort of thing, wrapping around the side and adding the sediment. As you can see, there's a lot of flat space on this beach. Now, a really good way to fix this is to add trees. Now, obviously, this is a tropical beach, so we're going to add some palm trees and some coconut trees. These are probably one of the easiest trees to build in Minecraft. It's just a thin, curved slope. You want to make sure you get the shape of the leaves right. Make them curved, but not too curved to the point where they look unnatural. You also don't want them to be too bunched up, which is why I made mine wider. I think these turned out great. At this point, we're going to start adding some of the greenery and the shrubbery back on to the cliff. I added these little leaves that are kind of flowing down the sides, and it really fills up the space and adds nice detail. As for the top, I just spammed saplings, grass, and flowers everywhere. You want this to look girthy, thick. If it doesn't look like Shrek's left nutsack, you're doing it wrong. Another trick I learned from Good Times with Scar is adding these little bits of sand on the edge of the shoreline. I really don't know why they're there, but they really look cool, so I'm going to keep them. I also added some bits of sand to the bottom of the seabed, just to vary the height a little bit. Another cool trick that I like doing when making beaches is adding these little protruding rocks just a few blocks above the surface. They add a cool detail and also add some color variation to the build. Plus, you can't go wrong with hard things protruding out of beaches. On this side area of the beach, I thought it would be a good idea to build a little bit of a dune, seeing that the land was naturally elevated. I mixed in some grass blocks and some gravel blocks, and then just spammed ferns and other grass on top of them to create a little bit of a dune effect, and I think it worked out pretty well. Now, I never intended to actually build anything on the beach, but I felt like this was a little bit too boring. So I built a little bit of a campsite with some logs and a fire pit, a grill, and some shovels lying on the floor. One of my favorite parts of the build is when I added these little bits and pieces lying around the beach. Some of these included potions, bottles, axes, shovels, and other junk. This made the beach look realistic because, unfortunately, it isn't a beach without its fair share of trash. Now, it is bittersweet, but I really do think that it added a lot of character to the build, but obviously it's completely personal preference. To finish this build off, I added a little gazebo on the side here. It had about 3 or 4 seats, and it was just meant to fill up some space. I added a little umbrella, and there we go, we're finished. I hope that was helpful, and be sure to leave your feedback down in the comments.